Hello, hello. You're listening to me, Gillian Gotzel, and welcome to the show. And today I have Mr. Karl McDermott, who is the Global Head of Business Development at Morpheus Network. Welcome, Karl.
Well, thank you, Gillian. Thanks for the invitation.
Yeah, you're so good. Well, of course, I have to start off with your location. You're in a pretty exotic location. Tell everybody where you are.
Yes, so in sunny Mexico.
Wow. And how many years have you been there?
Actually now 27.
Oh my
I
goodness.
came here with actually, a couple of suitcases thinking I'd be here for 1 year, and I've ended up staying 27. So something's going well for me.
That's mad. That is officially crazy. But you're settled there. You're happy there.
Oh
Your
yeah,
children
yeah,
and
I'm
family.
super happy. Yeah, family, children. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. Well done. Okay. So, Global Head of Business with Morpheus Networks. So, your background, you've got a lot. I was going through your things. We've some companies in common, like Infor, but you've got a lot of logistical companies. Is that how would you describe yourself in your career?
Yes, I probably spent the last 10 years working in logistics companies. Either I spent 2 years in a last mile logistics company here in Mexico. And then I was co-founder at I'd say like Uber of truck transport, that we kind of pivoted into proof of delivery, electronic proof of delivery. And then most recently, global head of business development for Morpheus Network, a supply chain middleware platform, very like a SaaS model where we're trying to solve, a lot of the issues around compliance and visibility for people who are doing, or companies that are doing, shipments around the world. So a lot of import export.
And tell me, with Morpheus Network, how old is the company?
So the company is a couple of years old in terms of, when the company was founded. Last year they did like an ICO or token sale.
So you went through all that traditional stuff, yeah?
We went through the funding,
yeah.
And since then it's really been building out the platform, getting those first customers through the door. We call it, creating some beer money revenues, while we're actually making sure the platform, covers off their requirements, creates the benefits they're expecting.
Because interesting, we were talking before we started recording. In terms of platform, you've gone through a few. You've been a bit flirty with the blockchains. Tell me where you started and where you are now and why.
Yes, so obviously we started on Ethereum, and that's really where the company was actually grew out of. But we kind of quickly realized that blockchain protocols are going to go through some quite big innovations, we think. So it was good to reach out to some of the other protocols, like EOS and Hyperledger, to ensure that we became blockchain agnostic. So we kind of see a world in supply chain where if you're trying to hook two companies together, one might be running on another standard and another one on let's say Hyperledger, and you really need to get them to talk together. That's what our middleware does.
Okay,
or at least at an architectural level.
Yeah, so you're big into interoperability.
Yeah. So I think that's going to be one of the key drivers for adoption, at least in this early stage.
And then tell me, you've done some projects with the US government on the Canadian border. Talk me through the projects there and what was special about the speedy nature of contracts.
What our platform does is creates visibility, and that can be done through either QR code using a mobile phone, RFID tags, smart tags, and also now IoT devices, which are being turned on all the time. So we're good at doing visibility, but the compliance angle is really where we spend a lot of time to create specific modules. So we have like a part of the product focusing around brand and product protection. So what we did with the Homeland Security, Department of Homeland Security, was use trademarks and IP registry, put that on blockchain, and then make sure when products are being imported into the US, that then they could reference those documents on the blockchain to ensure that the product and the documentation hadn't been falsified. That's one of the key areas of the platform is, how we can, resolve some of the issues around black market, grey market, counterfeit products. And so this is one of them, making sure that the IP registry and the trademarks are actually real. And then, those are then consulted in real time against what, the product states in order to facilitate or streamline exports or imports into the US.
So that was working in a marketplace where the rules were kind of known. The other
Yeah,
place you're talking about is where the rules are just not known. And of course, that's in Europe and Brexit. So
yeah.
how are you approaching that particular issue?
So Brexit's going to throw up some unique challenges around, what will be the final version, the technical specifications of trade. Now, so we've done a lot of work, obviously, in NAFTA or US MCA, which is the new NAFTA, around how to facilitate trade, and they still have a hard border. We're kind of used to that, and we've worked around those issues in order to expedite, imports from Canada into the US and Mexico to the US. So we're going to kind of leverage some of those skills, trusted counterparties, bring in greater visibility, making sure we have the right documentation, trade documentation, and the right shipping documentation in order to kind of solve some of those challenges around Brexit. So I think as soon as someone defines a technical specification that everyone agrees on, then it's like for us to see how we can work with some of our partners in Europe and how we might implement that.
I think that's going to be the big issue, defining what it is.
Yeah,
Defining
yes. I think it's a political issue, and
yeah.
we're not in the political space by any means, but as soon as that gets defined, or even if they want to prototype it, then that's something we can definitely help with.
And actually, what I think I didn't miss, but when you're doing the work within the Canadian border, you're doing proof of concepts and very speedy, because sometimes government tenders can be very laborious and long-winded. So you're doing very fast, speedy, almost on the fly.
What's happened with the Department of Homeland Security is they have actually an innovation lab in Silicon Valley. So they've realized, how to kind of dial into that, I would say, startup mindset. They invite companies, of all sizes. So it's like, you could have Walmart and you could have a company like ours, like pitching. And then they choose the best ones in order to kind of implement as a proof of concept. So I think they've kind of worked out that, if they did a typical procurement, that might take, from beginning to end, 18 months to get it from specifications to publishing, and proof of concepts can bring a lot more value to the table quickly. So again, that might be something that, Europe and the British government could actually, try out maybe in this context of Brexit, and then get something quicker rather than later.
Do you think that Morpheus Network could exist without blockchain?
I would say no. If you're trying to solve some of the issues around global trade, then blockchain is actually a really good solution. So you have lots of counterparties, usually more than 5. That goes between the shipper, maybe the freight forwarder, maybe you've got a carrier in there, customs, and then the same on the other side. So again, you could have customs on the import, your carrier on the inbound side, and then obviously the buyer. So there's usually 6 to 10 different stakeholders. And when you start looking at, 6 to 10 different processes, 6 to 10 different, I would say, platforms, that makes it very, very complex for everyone to agree on a standard. So what you see there is blockchain can help provide that a standard, provide that immutable record of truth. That so if you push something, which would be a shipping document, or if it's US, like an FSIS for US Food and Drug Administration, it's out there and it can't be altered or changed. So I think from a stakeholder point of view, and then for multiple different documents where you want to make sure there's only ever going to be like one real version of that document, and then different people can see it. And I think that makes it a great use case for blockchain.
I think it is interesting because you mentioned the Internet of Things and devices that can measure goods in transport, and there's lots of things that can happen, especially with perishable goods. They need to be the right temperature, humidity, and all the rest of it. And you're right, because if you don't have blockchain, who's to know that someone didn't turn off the cooler or turned up the heating? Because they could just edit that out. So and then you have your goods arrive, and you wonder why they all turn rotten after 2 days rather than a week that they're expected to.
I mean, that's the power, I think, of adding like blockchain to IoT. So IoT can provide some real good data for automating workflows, but unless you have blockchain, who's to know if those haven't been tampered with at some point? So bringing those two technologies together and making them actionable, I think, is one of the key drivers again, at least in what we see, the global supply chains that we're talking to with our customers and prospects.
It is interesting because supply chain is one of the oldest things that we do, because we've always moved goods from one part of the world to another, and there's different parties, and there's money changing hands, and yet it's taken quite a while, hasn't it, to become the last big thing that hit supply chain was containerization, wasn't it? Those standard containers that all of a sudden
the TEU, the 20-foot and 40-foot.
Sorry, that's your industry. But so is blockchain, because people talk a lot about use cases and is blockchain actually working, but supply chain, it is actually working, isn't it?
Oh yes, for sure. We still have some challenges. So, one of those, at least in the the maritime business, is, you have the ship's manifest. The ship's manifest has been around for 200, 300 years. Mm-hmm. And it's still required by law that ship's manifest is then couriered, from entity or stakeholder to support those shipments. So that's one area where we're seeing, some of our partners innovating to try and, digitize that process. But in other areas, we're already seeing, quite big adoption, some of these emerging technologies. So, blockchain is a very good use case for supply chain, and then obviously for some of the verticals that we're interested in.
So going back then to the blockchains themselves. So you start off in Ethereum, which is a natural starting point for many companies back in 2017, 2018, and then EOS and Hyperledger. Do you think you'll explore other blockchains? Do you think that will be a process?
I'm sure. I'm a big believer that I think this innovation cycle is at the beginning rather than at the end. So we will see a lot of improvements around, I would say, let's say scalability, maybe numbers of users, and in different products. And that's going to be great, I think, for the industry in general. Because then you'll see, people or companies gravitating to one, blockchain for their specific use case. So, we will see, I'm pretty sure, a lot of innovation and a lot of improvements around the performances of blockchains, over the next few years.
If you could look into a crystal whatever glass and look into the future. So, it's changing quite a lot. The blockchain has really made a huge impact in supply chain. Is there anything else? And you mentioned the Internet of Things too as well as being a big game changer. Is there anything else that you think you see happening in the whole supply chain space in the next 5 years that'll really, people look back and go, wow, that was a big game changer?
Yeah, I think once we have trusted data sets and we have trusted data sets at scale, then I think you'll see the deployment of ML, machine learning, and AI models in order to start to make some of those, let's say, simpler decisions, or maybe even complex decisions. So one of the big challenges for global supply chains is always around ETA. So if you look at this like on several industries, it's either very complex because there's a lot of different, events or handling points, or very complex because you've got lots of products. But I think ETA is one of those areas where, if you have the data and it's trusted, then the models will actually start to give you a much more reliable ETA. And I think that's going to be one of the, I would say, big benefits for companies over the next, 5 to 10 year horizon.
Wow, it's interesting. So for you are settled in Mexico. You're not moving anywhere. The weather's too nice. The food's too nice. People's too nice. Do you travel a lot for your work, or are you?
Yeah, I do travel a fair bit. This year, obviously, we were selected by Plug and Play and the world's biggest innovation platform to form part of their supply chain batch 4. So I made several trips to Silicon Valley at the beginning of this year. I was back there actually just like 3 weeks ago. We do, as a team, a fair bit of traveling around the Americas. We still are, while we're branching out now into Europe with Brexit, we still are very much, with the co-founders being in Canada, myself being in Mexico, and our biz dev team really being in the United States and Latin America, very focused on the Americas, executing as best we can there, and then looking to expand next year into some of the other geographies.
Okay, well, finally, Karl, this is an area where we're saying that innovation is huge. How do you personally keep abreast of the innovation that's coming down the track?
Yeah, I think there's so much now information on blockchain. Maybe my LinkedIn group of contacts has been skewed a bit over the last 2 years. But I think LinkedIn's a great forum for just finding out what companies big and small are doing in blockchain, and also specifically in the supply chain space. And then there's other forums that I think are quite useful. Obviously, there's a lot of congresses or business congresses that still are talking around how to adopt this technology, what are the challenges in adopting the technology. And I think what we'll see in the next couple of years is very large companies, the Walmarts of this world, start to present at those those events and talk around the business case and the business benefits that they generated. So yeah, I think that would probably be either some of the media channels will also be quite good in terms of getting abreast of some of the challenges and some of the opportunities. But
I think it's interesting. I think you're right. When the big brands come in and start talking about it, we have gone past mass adoption of that stage. It's there. It's arrived.
Yeah.
Wow. Listen, thank you so much for your time today. If people want to go and find you, what's the best way for people to find you?
So look me up on LinkedIn or send me a mail at Karl@Morpheus.network.
Brilliant. Well,
those are the best ways to find me.
The two of us. Well, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you very much, Gillian.